How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is the weekend update here on PSReady, and this is a very PS5 centric episode. The first topic is all about how the PS5 Pro is being built with emulation in mind, not backwards emulation, but forwards emulation. The second news story is that while you might get the best experience out of GTA 6 on the PS5 Pro, it might not be as good as you're expecting. And third, Sony is finally cracking down on these leaks that have been plaguing them for years. Yeah! Did I scare you? I'm cutting in here real quick because the first news story in this video is now that there's a new UI update for the PlayStation 5 and it's in beta, so it should be out pretty soon. All right, so this is the first real news story of the video. I was at the gym and I looked at Twitter and I saw that there's already a new beta update out for the PlayStation 5. The original source for this is Mystic Ryan, the other awesome news guy for PlayStation content here on YouTube, and it's not necessarily the UI and theme update that we've been wanting, but it's a great step in the right direction. All right, so this update really just focuses on the Explore tab of the PlayStation 5, but it actually adds in some really cool features. The first one is dynamic wallpapers. So right now you have a standard one that you can't change, but they've added in a few different ones that you can switch it to. So when your PS5 goes to its home screen, it'll default to whatever wallpaper you choose from the selection they give you. Obviously, I would love it if these dynamic wallpapers were custom, like you could just upload an image like you could on the PS3 and I think the PS4, but if not, you know, like with the themes on the PS4 that you could buy for $1 or $2 from the PlayStation Store. The functionality is there though, so that's good. That means they can update it in the future and hopefully spread it to the rest of the PlayStation operating system. There are also widgets coming to the Explore page now, which makes it kind of like the home screen of your PS5, or like if you have an iPhone, when you pull down from the top right corner, you can get all of that information that you need about your phone. That's essentially what they're turning it into on the PlayStation 5. There's a widget for connected devices so you can see how much battery your DualSense has. There's one for connected storage. So if you've got an external SSD, you can see how much storage is left there if you're recording to it like I do. There's a widget for game captures and screenshots, which is awesome because getting to the share menu, like the share media library on the PS5, is annoying as hell. I know most people probably don't use this feature as much as I do because I'm constantly exporting footage from my PS5 to use as B-roll in these videos, but anything they can do to make it easier to access that screen from the homepage, I am all for. There's a widget for your wish list in the PSN store, a widget for the PSN store itself, and of course a widget for friends. You can even customize it a little bit, move things around, change what widgets are at the top, which ones are at the bottom. Honestly, a little bit of a disappointing update, but as I said earlier, a step in the right direction. I would just love so much if they extended this to the rest of the PS5. I've been playing Rebirth every night, and I like the OS layout. I think it's actually one of the better ones that Sony's done. I know that when the PS5 came out, a lot of people weren't so hot on it, but now that I've gotten used to it, I honestly prefer it to what you get on the Xbox, or even it comes close to what you get out of Steam Big Picture mode. It's not quite as good as that, but you know, I'm a little biased there because I love the Steam Deck so much. When I saw this update came out, I was like, oh, it'd be sweet if you could change it to like games or anything you really want, like use a USB drive to upload your own images. I have a Helldivers 2 background going on in my computer that's all red themed that I'd love to have on my PlayStation 5, even if it is just the Explore page. But Mystic Ryan, in his video right at the end, he tried this out, and yeah, you can't upload your own custom images. It's just a preset of images that are like cool, but they're not anything special. This is in beta right now, so you need to check your email for a code to actually punch into the PlayStation Store, and then your PS5 will get these beta updates. I haven't gotten it yet, but I fully expect to, just because I've gotten every beta so far for the PS5. So yeah, if you want to check this out for yourself, head over to Mystic Ryan's channel, or you know, you can wait for this email to show up in your inbox and then you could download the update and check it out for yourself. All right, let's get into the original video that I filmed for this weekend. I'm in a great mood today. I finally got to test out the mechs in Helldivers 2. They are absolutely phenomenal. I hit a PR at the gym. I'm benching plates now, and that took a long time to get to, so I am excited. If you're excited about this video, let me know by subscribing to the channel and setting your notifications to all. Help me get to 200,000 subscribers, please, and thank you. All right, so let's jump into the first news story here. There is everything out there when it comes to the PS5 Pro. All of this started with Moore's Law is dead, then it was corroborated by Insider Gaming, and finally it was corroborated by Digital Foundry, who did a deep dive video on the PS5 Pro. I highly recommend checking it out because they're great. They know what they're talking about when it comes to specs. I'm giving you the more broad strokes general look at everything, so you know, you get the best of both worlds over here. Anyway, one key detail detail about the PS5 Pro that I didn't see a lot of people covering is that it's built with emulation in mind. And all of this comes down to that 10% CPU boost. That's not like going to be running 10% faster all the time. It's basically like an engageable, activatable boost mode for PS5 Pro games that need that extra little overhead of the CPU. And the GPU is going to be around 45% faster, more powerful even than what we have in the current PS5, which should net some extreme gains with pretty much every game you throw at this machine. So this tweet is coming from AMD Insider Kepler, and they say the way that Sony handles backwards compatibility is very complex, and it requires the new hardware to run at the same or higher clock speed, even if the new hardware is faster at lower clock speeds. If they are using Zen 6 defense cores for the PS6, they can't target 4 GHz plus for the PS5 Pro, as that could break the backwards compatibility. So what he's saying there is if the PS5 Pro got too big of a boost in terms of gigahertz, and then later on when they're using a more efficient chip, which means it can do more than the PS5 and PS5 Pro chip at lower gigahertz, that would break backwards compatibility with the PS5 Pro. And honestly, that makes a lot of sense to me. As time goes on, parts get better and more efficient. They also become cheaper, which is good because, you know, the parts are expensive right now, and that's why we're not going to see a price drop on the PS5, and the PS5 Pro is either going to be $600 or $650. So knowing that in the future they're going to have a chip that's more efficient than what's in the PS5 and PS5 Pro, yeah, making it only have a 10% boost makes a lot of sense to me. With that being said, I really think the CPU is going to end up being the bottleneck on the PS5 Pro. It's the bottleneck on everything right now. It's the bottleneck on the PS5, it's the bottleneck on the PC. A lot of these games don't really take advantage of GPUs all that much lately because of whatever they're doing with the scale, the graphics, the engine, the open world type of aspects that you're seeing in Jedi Survivor, for example. All of that stuff hammers the shit out of your CPU, so the GPU becomes less essential. So while it is good that the GPU in the PS5 Pro is on the level of something like a 4070 or 4080 desktop card, just like with most PCs out there right now, it's going to be CPU bottlenecked, which is why the frame rate target is 60 FPS versus 120 FPS. The one thing that's a bummer about that though is it's not going to eliminate the one big problem plaguing every single Unreal Engine 5 game, which is traversal stutter. If you're going between parts of the map, you're going to see the frame rate break down at least a little bit. If you played RoboCop Rogue City last year, that game was a great example of it. It's got these open world Detroit sections where when you're going between different sections of the map, you'll see the frame rate drop for around 2 or 3 seconds. Dead Space is another example. Even though I'm pretty sure that's not Unreal Engine 5, it still has traversal stutter. When you open doors and everything, you will see that frame rate dip, and it really can't be mitigated by variable refresh rate because it's actually breaking down the frame rate stream instead of like dropping frames. It's a little bit different. Still, the silver lining there is that this is super promising because it shows that Sony is all in on backwards compatibility going forward. That's always a risk with them, right? Like, we still don't have full backwards compatibility on the PlayStation 5. We can play some PSP games, we can play some PS1 games. PS2 games, if they're not there already, they're going to be coming because of this new developer that's working with Sony on porting over PS2 games. But when it comes to PS3 games, your only option is to stream them from the cloud, which is garbage. It's hot garbage, terrible experience across the board. So as far as I'm concerned, with emulation on the PS5, PS3 is a no-go. But then when you start moving into newer generations like the PS4, you have full backwards compatibility with every game on the market for the PS4. And I'm glad that's going to continue with the PS6 because then you'll have a whole library of digital games from the PS4, PS5, and then the PS6 as you build that library out. So knowing that they're keeping that in mind, it makes a lot of sense why the CPU is only 10% faster. And again, this isn't a brand new console in the same way that the PS5 is or the PS4 is. It's a brand new mid-gen refresh. So it can't really be that much more powerful than the PS5 or PS5 Slim because they have to have a reason to sell the PS6 in a few years. And if it's just a little bit better than the PS5 Pro instead of a lot better, that's going to be a much tougher sell. And as we all know right now, console sales, they're doing really well. The PS5 is outselling the PS4, which is great. It's just not at the level that Sony wanted. Now, again, to be fair to Sony, they set their goal extremely high for their PS5 sales, but they consistently have to keep dropping those goals, which is bad when you're looking at it from an investor standpoint. So hopefully they've got their roadmap all figured out there. But if you're wondering why the PS5 Pro only has 10% boost over the CPU of the PS5 and PS5 Slim, Slim. Now you have the full-on explanation, and I'd argue that the trade-off is worth it. But speaking of CPU bottlenecked games, let's get into the second news story here, which is all about GTA 6. If you read analyst reports, if you read investor reports, if you read anything about this game, it could not be more clear that this is arguably the most important game to ever release. I was just talking about it a few seconds ago. People are not buying games. There's black hole games out there like Fortnite and everything that all the Zoomers are playing, and I guess Gen Alpha at this point. They're not interested in stuff like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. They're probably not even interested in stuff like Helldivers 2. So you need a game that can show them what they're missing with a lot of these games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which you are missing. I saw the sales, they're down. You gotta buy this game, man. It is so good. It's so underrated. I don't understand why more people aren't playing it, but with GTA 6 around the corner, most people are expecting to be able to play that game on the PS5 Pro at a hard lock 60 frames per second. And honestly, I don't think they're out of line for expecting that. Sony and all the developers who have been putting out games on the PS5 lately have done nothing but train us to expect 60 FPS out of our games. Most of the games that come out, like Rebirth, like Helldivers 2, the vast majority of them all have a performance mode that runs at a pretty hard lock 60 FPS. There are, of course, a few outliers that will be locked at 30 FPS, like Dragon's Dogma 2 at launch. That's a great example. And of course, there's other games that run really well at 30 FPS, and then their performance modes are more of like it's a little bit better kind of mode. It's like 40 to 50 FPS most of the time. Alan Wake 2. But those few games aside, the vast majority of games on the PlayStation 5 so far have had really good frame rates at really good resolutions, which is awesome. So you can kind of see why people are expecting that if they get the next hardware from Sony, the PS5 Pro, they'll be able to run Grand Theft Auto 6 at 60 FPS. So that's why people are going to be disappointed to hear that Digital Foundry is saying that they fully expect GTA 6 to run at 30 FPS even on the PlayStation 5 Pro, but what you'll get out of that experience is a hard lock 30 FPS, and you'll get better resolution, better textures, better effects across the board. So you'll get a graphical upgrade over the PS5 and Slim. It just won't be in the frame rate department. And honestly, I was kind of expecting that, because if you look back to the launch of GTA 5 on the PS3 and Xbox 360, that was not even close to a 30 FPS experience. Like when you were playing that game, driving around the open world, especially when you get into combat scenarios, it would drop all the way down into the high teens a lot of the time. And then it was ironed out pretty well to 30 FPS for the PS4 when that launched. And as far as I'm aware, it never really got a 60 FPS update on consoles. And with their newest game, Red Dead Redemption 2, even if you were playing that game on the PS4 Pro or the Xbox One X at the time when it came out, you were just getting better graphics. You were not getting better frame rate, and they never updated that game to run at 60 on the PS5 and Xbox Series X. So for all intents and purposes, Rockstar has been a 30 FPS studio for a very long time. And the biggest reason for that goes back to the first news story, which is the CPU. When you're like having a massive open world, one of the biggest ever created, one of the most interactable ever created, like a world where you can really do anything in this weird version of Miami, Florida, and you have so many people walking around. You're filling the world with cars, you're filling the world with NPCs who have AI like movements that are already programmed in. That hammers the shit out of your CPU. And if your CPU is only 10% faster than what we already have in the PS5, and most games already we have now are getting CPU bottlenecked, it's easy to understand why a game like Grand Theft Auto 6 would have that 30 FPS limit. I've seen the usual Twitter warriors saying that if it's not 60 FPS at launch, it's not a buy for them. When I read that stuff, I'm like, whatever. They're either going to miss out on one of the greatest games of all time, or they're just lying to themselves. I don't think anyone's going to skip this game when it finally releases if it's as good as it looks. And with Rockstar's pedigree lately, I like, even with their missteps, right, with the definitive edition collection or whatever it's called of the GTA 3, San Andreas, and Vice City, yeah, they've messed up. They have weird updates for Red Dead Redemption 2. They abandoned the online. It's not like they're perfect, but the quality of their single player games is completely unmatched. So like, yeah, I just don't really care, honestly. I will be buying a PS5 Pro at launch. Of course, I'm going to play play this game on that console because it's not going to be available on PC. And if you're the kind of person who's waiting for the PC version, which will probably take 6 months to a year, I don't think you'll be able to run that game at 60 FPS locked on PC either, because I remember the launch of Red Dead Redemption 2, I had a top of the line rig and I couldn't even lock that game at 60. And that brings us to the third news story, which is that Sony is finally investigating these leaks. I hate leaks. You guys know, maybe if you watch this channel for a while, that I got my start on YouTube on a movie channel. I still run it. It's just called Jimmy Champagne. It's horror centric. I talk about slasher movies, mostly zombie stuff, you know, just basically anything with blood, guts, and gore. That is the focus of my horror channel. And all the leaks that we're seeing in games lately, all of that was preceded by the movie industry. It all really started around the time of Spider-Man No Way Home, when everything about that movie leaked and people realized they can make a quick buck, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on YouTube, or at the very least get some clout off of leaking stuff. Now you've got things leaking all the time from Star Wars shows. Halloween Kill's entire script leaked a year before it came out, which made covering that movie a pain in the ass for me. And now with gaming, we of course have full console specs leaking, we have games leaking, Nvidia leaked the roadmap of Sony PC ports. Like, leaks are happening all the time, and now Sony looks like they're cracking down on it. Tom Henderson specifically said, as expected, Sony has launched an internal investigation into the leaked documents on Trinity, that's the name of the PS5 Pro, as it leaked during a third-party rollout. Not sure on the implications yet, as I don't think they can catch one individual, but Sony could reduce third-party developer pool for new tech as a result. So that is a very real consequence, right? Like, we have been hearing for a long time that Sony was either preparing to send out dev kits to third-party devs for the PS5 Pro, or at the very least, they were planning on briefing them during GDC and letting them know all the specs of the PS5 Pro. We know that first-party developers have known the specs, and some of them even have dev kits for a long time now. But now, because of these leaks, where literally the entire spec sheet of the console with examples of games running on it have gotten out into the world, and it's been corroborated by the best sources in the industry, like Tom Henderson and Digital Foundry, they've reached their limit. They're hitting the breaking point. They're saying, all right, this is going to affect the rollout of the PS5 Pro. And that really sucks for us, because the longer that developers have with this new console, the better games are going to be on it when they come out. And I'm not even just talking new games. I'm talking stuff like games that are going to get patches to run with PSSR or run in a 60 FPS mode that they didn't have before, like in Alan Wake 2 or Jedi Survivor, which has a 60 FPS mode, but it's not a hard lock 60. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, for us, the hardcore enthusiasts of the PlayStation fan base, the leaks are getting a little egregious, and honestly, I can't blame Sony too much for finally cracking down. I'm really curious if we're going to hear about some top-level executive or like a studio CEO or something being the one who leaked all this stuff and have them get fired. That would absolutely be insane, right? Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. Make sure you let me know what you think down in the comments below. Remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.